Hey everyone, welcome to another episode from Pro Engineering. In this episode, we are finally going to paint the Tyco Bandit's body. Right now, we're in my garage, and I'm going to use this paint booth as well as my airbrush. And I guess let's get started. The first thing we're going to lay down is the red stripe. And for the red, we're going to use Textures 1103 Gloss Red. So you can see, oops, sorry for the lighting in here. I'm going to dilute this a little bit with some thinner and spray down some red. This is the first layer that we need. We're going to mask off the stripe that we need, give it a light coat of primer, and then paint the next color. Back in the studio here, we can see that I put on this masking tape. This is an absolutely amazing product. This is a Tamiya masking tape for curves. It comes in a few thicknesses, but this stuff will just wrap around and weave its way anywhere you want, and it really, really works good. My suggestion is that when you're putting it down, it's really easy to stretch, and what ends up happening if you overstretch it, then the corners tend to peel up. So be careful. But in the meantime, the red has been masked. We'll go ahead and do a nice coat of primer on it, and then paint the next color. Lavender layer has been primered and dried, and now what we're going to do is we're going to apply the overall color of the car, which is going to be orange. And when that dries, we'll come back later and do the accent at the bottom. I'm doing the orange first because that's going to be a lot more paint to lay down, so there's going to be more overspray on the bottom. Whereas later on, when I do the lighter bottom coat, there'll be significantly less overspray because I'll have a finer spray pattern on the airbrush. The orange that I've gone for is basically just orange. This is 1127 Textures Gloss Orange. The entire body has been masked off, and this is because we're going to do our last coat on the bottom. Gloss Tangerine, which looks fantastic. This is another Tester's color. It is number 1126. It is all mixed over here for the airbrush, and let's get cracking. All right, folks, let's peel off all of the paper that was covering the orange. Well, this is it. We see the two colors, the tangerine and the orange, on top of each other, but that's not it. What I want to do is go over the stripes that were here with white. And specifically, I want to use the airbrush to create that, I don't know, I guess that airbrushed effect, if that's a little bit redundant. I really want this truck to look like it's straight out of the 1990s, so that is the plan. Cross your fingers, because right now I could screw the whole thing up. Got the fan on still because obviously I just finished painting the white. I kind of want to get the other stripe masking off as soon as possible. Oh god, that scared me, sorry. This was the masking in between the red and the lavender. Kind of scared me at first. All right, let's peel off the lavender. Put the front panel onto the car body at some point coming up, but as you can see I made some modifications to it because I want to install all the lights. Now what I had to do is first remove these side markers, which are just heat staked into the back, so I just cut the little mushroom end off of the shaft and it just popped right out. The headlights come out the same way, and then I just hollowed out the headlights, and then I cut this little slot, if you can see it right there, into the side of where the side marker goes. Now on these trucks, this light doesn't flash. This is just a kind of a side marker slash parking light. And it's going to work fiber optically by slotting into the headlight. As for the turn signal, I just use a Dremel tool, hollowed out a little bit, and then used an X-Acto knife to very carefully cut the square out. So we can start by dropping in the headlights. You can see the headlights have these little slots. Now on one side I left it clear, and on the other side I painted it. So this one over here is going to be the left side headlight and the right side headlight. Just like that. Once the headlights are glued into place, I'm going to use some orange paint to paint the outside of the parking light. And then on the inside, I'm going to paint it silver to add a little bit more reflection. But make sure that the end right here stays clear, otherwise the light will not pass through. Then we'll once again get some glue and just slide that straight in. Now it's not going to glow too brightly, but it will glow more than enough. So at this point, here is where we are at. And the last thing we'll do is install the turn signals. Now the turn signals will go in like this, and it's pretty easy to see which side goes where. On the rear, you can see that that screw boss would be in the way if we flip this marker over. So it's going to go like that, so the little boss goes right beneath where the screw, that little round protrusion is. So just lay it on its face. Drop in the light, and I'm going to use a little bit of hot glue because that'll give me enough time to have the glue begin to set as I'm trying to position this. Now that the front end is done and that the body is painted, we can go ahead and assemble the two. I didn't show the clear coating because I used to use a spray can and it's kind of messy, so I didn't want to dive into that and hose the camera down with paint. Prior to clear coating, I did install the taillights, which simply required me to glue them in place. I did cut out the area around where the taillight went because in this case here, they're going to be illuminated. So you can see that there's little buckets on the inside. And now we can simply go ahead and install the front panel. So we got the corresponding holes for the turn signals and the headlights. And this should just snap in there. These little tiny studs right there, if you can see them right there and right there, those have to line up just like that. And there's the front end. Because I simply cannot wait, I'll install the back bumper. These are printed in SLS nylon, and then I sanded them after a couple coats of primer and painted them chrome, and they'll just go in right there and right there. Put a couple of self-tapping screws in there. You can do the same for the roll bar. Now these are both Ampro products. I believe they'll install like this. These are slightly different from the factory pieces, as the factory Bandit has a big scoop right here, which you can see. I simply didn't care for it, so I decided to go a different path. These are made out of SLS nylon, and to install them, make sure that the hole in the diagonal support is cleaned out. Use a 2.5mm drill bit, and then an 8mm self-tapping screw. To install the roll bar, make sure that you have the back tire off. We'll just wiggle this in. Okay, and that'll just drop straight in there. Don't worry if it pops back up. If you are going to install the Ampro products here, they're held in place by the chassis. So without the chassis, it'll just want to pop back up. You can then install the spare tire. This is the windshield that I want to install in the Bandit, and unfortunately it's pretty, I don't know, I mean, these must be scratches here, but it almost looks like some kind of chemical got on it and kind of corroded it. So we're going to start with some 800 grit sandpaper, just to kind of knock down the high spots. And when that's cleaned up, we'll go over it with some 1500 and then some 2000. And that's simply because those are the grades of sandpaper that I have on me. Okay, the sides look polishable. The front simply did not. So I think, maybe this doesn't. This isn't as bad. We'll just go over 1000 on the sides. Anyway, so take your 1000 grit. I'm not going to show every step here. I think you have better things to do. We'll go over this with the 1000 to get rid of the scratches from the 800, and the 1500 to get rid of scratches from the, oh, you can see that's already kind of looking glossy there. All right, and that's just about done. Now what we're going to do is go ahead and polish this. So to get rid of these scratches here, I'm going to use what I use on my real cars, and this is this Adams Polishes. In this case, it's going to be their scratch out. I think they call it something else now. This bottle's 1,000 years old, and then the Revive is going to be used after the scratch out to take out any of the residual scratches from the scratch out. We'll just rub on there. Okay, just like that. Just rub it on in. The scratch out's done its job. It's got rid of the vast majority of the deep scratches, and now we're going to go over it with the Revive. I like this stuff because it is a chemical-based polishing compound, and this means that when using the proper application and removal process, like a microfiber towel, it's nearly impossible to create any additional scratches. It works really well. The downside is it does take a little bit longer than you would normally find with a abrasive polish. All right, we have our nicely polished black Bandit windshield. And we're going to drop this in. The back does a little snap, I believe. Oh, there you go. Let's seat the back first, and then the front goes in. Just like, oh, that's freaking awesome. Okay, let's screw that in now. All right, the Bandit's wiring harness is all done for the lights. So we have all the lighting all set up here. We have our left, right, headlights, brake lights. There we go. Reverse lights. All right, we'll just run the wires in the body. Okay, I ran all the wiring, and this is the catastrophe that we have. But everything is wired and should work, so let's go ahead and drop the body on. Body is installed, and we now have to reinstall the rear shocks because they bolt to the body. Swing these up and reconnect. The earlier video with the Bandit running is where we initially showed off the shock mounting system. It is in no way elegant, but I wanted to use the original shock mounts in the rear. And to the keen-eyed observer, there's this big kind of bar right there. The reason why that bar exists is that when I first bought this, the rear shock mount was broken. I bought this from a kid I went to grade school with, used for $20. I overpaid, and the rear shock mount was broken. My grandfather fixed it for me, and that shock mount that you see right there is the same one that he fixed something of 20 years ago, and therefore it will not be changed. Rear shocks appear to be operational. Front shocks need to be tightened up a little bit because they're a little weak right now. Just tighten this up a little bit. Sweet. I think we need to now install the front bumper. And again, this is an Ampro reproduction unit. The original unit has auxiliary lights that are here in the front, and they are molded into the bumper. In this case here, they are separate pieces so that if something is broken, you can simply replace that instead of tossing the entire bumper like you would have originally. We'll screw that down, then we'll install the auxiliary lamps here, as well as on the custom version on the roll bar. The last thing we have to do is install the auxiliary lamps. These come in sets of 2, 4, and 6. In this case here, since I have the 2 in the front and the 4 on the roll bar, I'll go with the 6, but in most cases, you're probably just gonna need the 2 for the front bumper. The lenses also come in 2, 4, or 6. And there is no decal here. This is simply done in ultra detail plastic. I painted this white, used a black Sharpie to color in the embossed areas, and then I clear coated everything. If you flip the buckets over, you're gonna see that there are little notches inside, which prevent the lenses from going in at any kind of incorrect angle. So let's go ahead and glue them in. Once the glue dries, we'll go ahead and get our flush cutters and just snip the sprue right off. So we'll just kind of slide this in. And because I've painted it with 1,000 layers of paint, I may need to scrape off some of the excess here. I had a lot of layers of paint on this, so I just scraped that off, and then we'll drop it on in. And that should fit, and it does. And that's all of them. I think we need to take a look at the whole truck now.